So that's already done, and I'm also going to put on my timer because I also forgot that. And it's such an interesting topic that I had to run for the last slide, so I'm going to try to do it better this time. So welcome to you all. I'm going to talk about neuroscience and how to use it in these bizarre times, and especially to augment our creativity innovation, because I think I am very convinced that many companies and many people as a person and as a human being are in need to use the creativity and the innovation even more than in other times. So I think it's a quite important topic. As I said in the introduction, there were many sessions, many keynote speakers, and also many sessions on demand. And we could really divide it into different categories. And there were a lot of sessions on neuroscience and learning. And in the months before, and even in the weeks or the week before the lockdown, I was enrolled into a chair endowed by Melexis chair on neuroscience at AMS. And so it was really into my attention, and I was able and lucky to use the first part of the lockdown to really dig a little deeper into that material, because it's very interesting and a lot of new things to learn. So I'm going to share some insights, and most of the insights I'm going to share in the presentation come from Britt Andrietta, and she's the former CLO from lynda.com. I'm going to explain why it's such a coincidence, actually, that she is, that she's really such an expert speaker on the topic. So we're going to talk about a little bit of brain science. I'm not a neuroscientist. I am just an enthusiastic, passionate learner on that behalf, but I'm not really a neuroscientist, so I'm not going to explain you how the brain works, but how I capture it. I'm going to talk about creativity and innovation, and to create a climate and culture within a company or a human being or a human being's life to be able to use it. So what can be strategies to boost your innovation? We are going to use the chat box because it's quite an informative session. I'm going to use all the time, so it's not going to be very, very interactive, but please, please, please do use the chat box if you have a comment or a question or anything you want to say. You can also use the bar, the space bar on your computer. Then if you use the space bar, you are unmuted automatically for just the time that you press the space bar. So if you want to say a quick word, please do. No problem. Britt Andrietta was talking about the Great Recession, not this recession, because we don't have any facts and figures on this recession, and even if it is a recession yet, but the former Great Recession had 17% of the companies who died, 47% who survived, and only 9% of the companies were thriving. That means that there were only 9% of the companies using the opportunity of the recession to thrive, which is, of course, maybe quite logical, seems like quite logical to you, but there can be more. So actually, these 9% of the companies, they were not really licking their wounds. They were really adopting to this entrepreneurial mindset of innovation, and to use the recession to spark actually on the innovation part. And I said I was going to refer to lynda.com. She was the former CLO of lynda.com, but she was already there when it was Lynda. The company was not lynda.com, the company was just plain Lynda. And Lynda was actually a different sited possibility on different sites of training and workshops. So they worked together with many, many experts on many different domains, where you could just go into a different, and it was a coordination of all these different sites and all these different possibilities of experts giving workshops. And then all of a sudden there was 9/11, and there was no possibility of travel anymore. So they really very quickly really turned everything into lynda.com and became virtual. But it was at that particular time not so obvious. It was quite a breakthrough to do it, but apparently it was very successful because it was bought by LinkedIn afterwards, as you might know. Now, I'm just going to talk about creativity and innovation, and before getting into or digging deeper into that, I want to share how I see or how I have learned to differentiate them from each other. So creativity and innovation is very often used into the same sentence. But creativity is actually about the idea. It's about the unleashing of the idea. It's really the aha moment. And the innovation is the path or the process to make this idea viable. So it is completely different, but it is very important that you have that you support both in a company. So the creativity is more the aha moment, and the innovation is more the process, like the design thinking to get there. And creativity, according to Britt Andrietta, is derived from 9 intelligences. She has, in her speech, a lot of, she gave a lot of information on the 9 intelligences, which is of course quite interesting, but it will lead us too far. I'm not going into depth to the 9 intelligences, but apparently they can all be located in our brain. So it is not so easy because it's a developing science. Neuroscience is a really very fast developing science, but we don't have all the answers yet. We are still in the phase of researches, and so not everything can be proven, but we are talking about 9 intelligences that can enhance our creativity. On the innovation part, she's talking about 2 different paths. She's talking about the breakthrough path and the incremental path, and the importance of having actually both on board in your companies or your lives. So there is a quote of Bob Iger, who is the former CEO, is not anymore in between. He has become a member of the board, but he was the former CEO, and he says the heart and the soul of the company is really creativity and innovation. So you really need both side by side in a very formal process to be able to use it into your company. So let's dig into the creativity first. And this is the part what I like the most, of course, and it's our brain. And I learned in the last few months that our brain is actually our most precious asset. So whatever is on your shoulders, please look after it very thoroughly and cautiously, because it is very, very precious. It's our brain with sorry, 86 billion neurons in it. As far as we know, we probably don't know everything, as I said, but as far as we know, there are so many billion neurons in so many different types, in so many thousands of different types that can be connected to each other. So the capacity of the brain is really immense. It is really not, it is not stoppable. We cannot really see the end of it. There is many possibilities. So what Britt Henrietta said, and which really struck me, was she said, please wear a helmet, because it is such a precious thing what is on your shoulders. Please wear this helmet, because you really have to protect it. So many possibilities for these neurons to get connected. So, and in many different parts of the brains, there can be new activities installed. It's also very unique. I don't know if you know Stich Brooks, but Stich Brooks is a cyclist, a Belgian cyclist, who has had an accident a few years ago and was for a long time in a coma, and there was only a very, very small brain activity. When he woke up, it was quite of a miracle that he already woke up from his coma, and it was a very small brain activity. So he used his neuroplasticity to create the new connections between still existing neurons to really multiplicate and to make sure that there was, again, a large part of the brain which was active again, and which could take over all the functions that were normally located in different parts. So it is also very unique. And she says that there are 3 networks of creativity within our brain. It's the executive center, the imagination, and the salience. And we do need the 3 of them to work together to enhance our creativity. So in the first place, we need our focus. So we need our focus. We need to be able to focus on something. On the second part, we also need imagination. We need our what-if possibilities of daydreaming. to go together with our focus. And then, of course, we need to toggle between these concentration and also the environment, because we often say that creativity is just looking at the environment and having this possibility of taking everything in of the environment. That's true, that's the toggling, but we also need to combine that with the focus and to combine that with the imagination, the what if, so not the reality. So it is quite complex to, you will say, okay, what's easy about that? Because if we have to make sure that everything is available in our company, it becomes quite difficult. And that's true, but you can have some simplifications, because the whole purpose of using this creativity is to create new connections between the neurons. And if you create new connections, you are able to get new habits and new behavior, which is Nora, which is going to the topic that is used by Nora and also by Jeff, that we need this in these times. So may I ask you a question? What do you see? Can you put that in the chat function, please? What do you see? Okay, I have an answer. I'm just going to quickly look. Frog, frog, kicker, frog, 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 sorry. Okay, okay. I see many frogs. A grumpy frog, Eugenia. Okay, nice. Does anybody else see anything else? Okay. For the record, it is very normal that you see a frog. So you're all normal people. Can I ask you, do you see a horse? Okay. I see people who see horses. Okay, people who don't see horses. This is how you see the horse. So you have to look at it from another angle. So if you do like that, so now I put a picture like that, but if you do like that on the frog, you will see the horse. So it is just to give a little bit of a teaser that every brain works a bit different. Many people see the frog first. Most of the people see the frog first. And then if I ask people if you see a horse, then if we have time, if I would let you look for it, everybody, of course, would see the horse, because you would look for it until you find it. And then you use your brain in a very different way. You can use it in a very analytical way, or you can use it in a very intuitive way. And if I leave you with a lot of time, you will probably use the analytical way to make sure that you choose every position to find the horse. So you need, of course, that's what we call an insight. The moment that you have found the horse, the moment that you find the horse, even without me asking, then it would be an insight. So it would be the combination of the concentration of the brain to really concentrate on, I have to look for something, but I also have to shut out whatever I see now, because otherwise I keep seeing this frog. And then it is not possible anymore. If I keep seeing this frog, then I will not allow myself to use my imagination network in my brain, or to toggle between my environment and everything that I'm concentrating on. So it is really the combination that we need. And it's an interesting quote of Steve Jobs saying, whenever you ask a creative person how they did something, they feel a little bit guilty because they didn't really do it. It's just happening. They just saw something. It seems very obvious to them, because they could connect their experiences and then synthesize it into new things. And that is where creativity comes in, when you can synthesize it into new things, but you need the aha moment to be able to do that. And the aha moment is, again, I'm not the neuroscientist, but I was lucky enough to So as I told you, to have a little bit of time to dig into that. But the aha moment is, it can be seen in our brain. So there is a lot of research done, and a lot of people have been the guinea pigs to do this research. And we see that the aha moment is the combination of gamma and alpha waves. So the gamma waves is really the focus, and the alpha waves is actually the relaxation and the brain blinker. So we need to blink out our brain to be able to have this aha moment, because this is the last one just before the insight. The alpha waves are just the last ones before the insight. So we really need to give a rest to all this focus. This focus must stay in. We have to sensory gate everything, to shut everything out, to keep it inside, but then blink our brain and not look at the frog anymore, to give the example. Apparently, in many research, what helps to have this creativity and aha moments is nature. And in more specific, actually, than nature even is water. So there are many researchers who came down with, when they asked people, how did you come to this? How did you come to that? Like Steve Jobs said, not many people were able to analyze it, but most of them were in a relaxation mode and was combined with nature, and in more specific with water. So that might be a very good trigger to create creativity into our brain. Of course, I understand that it is not possible for everybody to work in this scenery, but what many offices do is they make sure that there are pictures of beautiful natures, or screensavers, or possibilities for people to get fresh air, etc., or water to see or to look at water. That can be very inspiring for creativity. A good example of that is Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk is the inventor of the medicine for polio. He was doing a lot of research, and it took him a long time, and he was quite frustrated that he couldn't really break through with the medicine, because he was not really getting there at the end. And then he went on a holiday, and he said, okay, it's not going to work. I just have to shut my mind off, and I'm this close to the medicine, but it's not possible for me to have my aha moment, to get through and to really create it. So he was on the ocean. And he said that the ocean was really having this effect on him, because he was in this relaxation mode, and he was sensory gating everything else out, and he was in the possibility of creating the new thing. So he said intuition will tell the thinking mind where to look next. And apparently after that he built his Salk Institute, and the Salk Institute for Medical Research was built really literally. I have a picture on it. I haven't in the presentation, but I saw a picture of it. It was really in the ocean, with high ceilings and big windows. So for people to really use these things. So just a recap, we need the preparation of the brain. Of course, we need to focus. Jonas Salk was never in the capacity of creating the medicine without all the research. This is really very important. But we need also the resting of the neocortex, and we need other networks, imagination, etc., and the brain blinking and the sensory gating. The sensory gating is very important. It's a different word for brain blinking. So we need to really shut out everything else and make sure that we leave room for creativity. So a few strategies to use or to cultivate this creativity. We did not really talk about leveraging strengths and matching roles, because this is quite important within companies. Of course, Jonas Salk, to take him as an example again, was working within his strengths. It is not that he was not passionate about it. So he was really working in his strengths. He was the right person on the right task. So this is really also conditions which are and remain very important to cultivate creativity. But then work with the brain. Make sure that the environment is good. Make sure that people are able to relax. Make sure that people are able to control their time. And definitely now, when we are looking at this virtual working in this virtual time, we see that the environment can be really or thriving or disruptive. We see, I saw the article in the Standard this morning saying that people, 70% of the people want to remain working in this environment because of the good things about it, because they can be in nature, because they can look at the trees, because they can have their creativity cultivated, and they can control their own time, and they can also say, okay, stop, I'm going to stop, because now it's not going to be productive anymore, because I have there the children who are next to me. So work with the brain, use the brain. And then, of course, if possible, nature and water. And what is also important, and I didn't talk about it, and I'm not going into depth about it, but it's brain games. If you are able to use brain games, it's really cultivating creativity. I have a very good example. I don't know if anybody of ANC is listening in this chat, in this group, because I didn't really look at all the names yet, but I was giving a workshop at ANC Systems, and in the toilet there were brain games, which was really very nice, because I was really, it was cultivating creativity. It is really working, but it's also a company where innovation is really in their values. So it is nice to see that it's really working, and it's inspiring for creativity. Small things that you in your company can do, of course. Then the second part that is going to help us and that can be done in these challenging times is innovation, to make our companies and our lives thrive again. And innovation is seen by 84% of the executive as really the key factor of success. So they see it as really very important for future success, but many of them are not really installing this process of innovation within their company. So as long as it does not remain, or as long as it does not become a really formal process into your company, even a task or in a role, then it is not going to work. So this is really a very strange insight. And there was a research done, and in this research it was very clear that it was quite strange, because many of the executive people were really saying that it was very important to be able to have success. And on the other hand, it was quite difficult to use it as a formal process. So Britt Andrietta, she says there are two different paths in innovation. It's the breakthrough path, and the incremental path. The breakthrough path is really about disruptive and transformative, and the incremental path is quite slow, step-by-step way of innovation. So the risk-taking is mostly done, or mostly appealing to companies when they are really into a crisis. So you could say, and we don't know that yet because it's too early to tell, but you could say that in this crisis that we are in, because many processes need to be differently organized and differently initiated, that a lot of breakthrough innovation is getting through. Like, for example, in a big example of sectors that are very much hit, like restaurants and cafes, they really have to use other ways and adapt their behavior very strongly to make sure that they can get out of this crisis. So that is really transformative, disruptive. I have a very good example of a very fine restaurant, by the way. I'm not going to promote it because that's maybe not ethical, but it's in Bornem here, and it's a very nice restaurant. It's a very good chef, and in the beginning he was quite negative, of course, because he had to shut down his restaurant. It was not nice. It was a small restaurant, and then he changed in a transformative, disruptive way. And he said, okay, 2 days I'm going to organize takeout, but it's going to be very special. I'm going to really make sure that you can have a dinner at home like you would have it in the restaurant. It's not going to be in this ugly basket. It's not going to be difficult for you to create. I assure you, it's going to be really, it's a menu. It's not a dish. It's totally different from anything else. It was so successful he had for 2 days, he only did it for 2 days in a week, and he had 400 menus per day. So he had 800 menus, and his restaurant is only for, I think, 50 people at the max. So he said, this is really, it was really transformative and disruptive. And in the end, when he could open again, he was really in doubt. Should I do it, or should I remain within this? And he decided to combine it. But this is really a disruptive or maybe a breakthrough innovation path. Incremental is more small steps. It's really the slow process. Now, I told you about the research that I was going to discuss, and it's a research of CB Insights, and it's about the importance of innovation and creativity in organizations. And as I said in the beginning, many people said it is very important, but only 78% of the respondents focus on incremental changes. They don't focus on the breakthrough. So they all think it is important, but the incremental changes take more than a year. So it's quite in dubio. And then we see that high-performing companies are more likely to be the first movers, and high-performing companies are more breakthrough. So we see that very few companies use this breakthrough innovation path, but the ones that use it are most of the time very, very successful. So this is quite an eye-opener, I think. Many people, they don't really do the innovation, they don't really do the breakthrough part. And what they also don't do is use the different sources of innovation. We saw in the report that most of the companies who are innovating, they are mostly incrementally innovating, and they are using their customers and employees as the sources of innovation, which means that they're going to ask surveys and things to their customers and employees. It's rather the known paths. So it's not about the competitive intelligence. It's not about the vendors they were investigating. It's not industry analysts, or even accelerators or incubators, or even bankers and capitalists that were thrown into the attention. So this is also an insight that I got. Think out of the box and maybe ask other people than your employees and your customers how to innovate. What was also clear in the study, that most of the companies want to build the innovation themselves on an incremental way. So it takes from 1 year to 25 plus months, so more than 2 years to build something. So it takes a very long time, and they not very often look at the possibility of buying innovation. The average time of the ideation, I already said it, so 25% takes more than 25 months. So that's a quarter of the innovation is taking more than 2 years, and only 9% is taking less than 6 months, sorry, 6 months. So this is also something that was really an eye-opener for me, that I think that in these times we are maybe more eager to do a little bit of more breakthrough innovation. And only a few of them don't have this, a few of them have this formal innovation process. So most of the companies, 60%, don't really have this formal innovation process. So it is there, but it is not really there into the company. They say it is important, but it is not really into a formal process. So again, a few strategies for innovation. In the many sessions I heard, it was quite important to use both the breakthrough and the incremental, because it is very important to have the combination of both. Of course, you cannot only use the breakthrough, but it's because of too many risks. But if you only use the incremental, it sometimes happens that the execution is really going very slowly. There should be a clear process on innovation. You should really expand your sources, like using other sources, academic partners, accelerators, bankers, venture capitalists, ideation consultants, to create this path. And really don't forget to focus on the execution, because many people or many companies stay in the phases of trying and research. So we need this execution, and to be able to go through the moment of execution, we most of the time also need this aha moment in creativity. And then last but not least, because I'm going to be shut up in 70 seconds, there is a difference between climate and culture. And the climate is the preparation that you must do in your company to create the channels, the tools, and the support for this new idea development. And then it has to become a daily part of the organization. And that's when we talk about this culture of innovation. But you have to create the climate first. It cannot become an innovative culture when you don't create the possibility of, for example, brain games within your company, or for example, using the brain, or for example, using the nature to enhance your creativity. So you need to create this climate within your company. So you need to implement on all these strategies before it becomes part of your culture. So the world needs dreamers and the world need doers, but above all, the world needs, the world needs most are dreamers that do. So it's a combination. So many thanks for listening to me. I'm sorry I didn't have the possibility to leave too many interactions, but it's quite an informative topic, and the interactions will be more expanded, I hope, with my colleagues in the other rooms.
Indeed, but Jeff is